Hi everyone, Amy here with some final feedback to wrap up our campaign analysis blog workshop discussion from last week. I just want to start by saying kind of logistically, this was an exercise in, or an example in why it's important to post your discussions on time. And, I did send out that email earlier in the week and posted it in the news and in the discussion, so hopefully you all saw that. But, the reason I have these deadlines throughout the week, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, and the reason I put such emphasis on those in terms of points is because, without people posting multiple times throughout the week, it's really hard to keep the conversation moving forward, and you don't get the feedback that you need from each other in order to succeed. So that, I think, was something that all of you kind of got to witness firsthand as we saw, Sunday came along and most people didn't have any feedback yet. So I was glad to see that you guys did kind of jump back in and most people did receive feedback in the end. And as long as you posted your original rough draft and provided full feedback comments to someone, I won't take off 10% from the essay, but if you posted your feedback late, you will lose points from the discussion for this week. Just because those late posts kind of stop things in their tracks in terms of how the discussion's going, and it makes it really hard for the original writer to kind of get any thing to go off of from their original work or ways to improve, and makes it really difficult for them to do their reflections at the end of the week, which can reflect back on their own grade as well. So I am going to focus my comments today on some of the feedback you provided to each other as well as what I saw in reflections, but in general I think maybe this was kind of a midterm blues type of week where it seems like some of you were maybe struggling with the holiday to keep up with the deadlines and things like that. So hopefully we can get back on track as we move into the argument unit this week, but I'll make some more specific comments, things I'm referring to as we move along here. So let me just start with some of the really good feedback that I saw. I did mention in my midweek updates that all of you that had provided feedback to each other up to that point on, I think it was the middle of the day on Thursday, had done a really excellent job and had received full credit for all your comments. Remember that you do have to provide both in-text comments on the draft itself, as well as answer all of these questions in depth. And just as a pointer for the kind of comments you provide in these workshops, please do number your responses to the questions. I know some of you write it out in more of a narrative style and you do cover everything, it's just not organized that way. That's okay, but it kind of makes it a little more difficult for the original writer when they're reading the feedback to kind of break it apart and see exactly what each comment is addressing. And so if you do number your feedback according to these questions here, if they have any confusion about the context of that feedback or need any clarification, they can always go back to the question and see, oh, okay, I see here they're talking about my organization, or oh, okay, I see here they're talking maybe about the fact that I'm offering too much summary, because sometimes we think we're being clear in our feedback and it can be maybe a little bit vague or a little bit out of context, and so having these questions as a reference I think helps the original writer make sense of the feedback we provide to each other, and numbering those questions is just part of that. So but again, most of you up till the deadline on Friday had done a really good job with your feedback, those of you who did get it in on time, and those of you who turned it in late, most of you were still providing relatively good feedback to each other, but there were a couple of sets of comments that I wanted to highlight in particular. One of those was the set of comments that was offered on Tabitha's original post by Emily. So let's jump into that thread. Emily did a really good job kind of giving a heads up that she would be working on the critique, just so that no one else would jump in there and provide a secondary review. That's a good way to kind of make sure that each person gets feedback from just one person. And then you can see she's uploaded both documents here. She's got the critique itself, which highlights the comments that she has on the draft, and I'll come back to those in just a second. And then she's also got her second document, which is the overall end comment that incorporates her answers to all of those questions. And so not only is she answering all the questions, but she also has some kind of summary paragraphs to give some context for that as well. So that can be important, as I already mentioned earlier. So let's look at the in-text comments that she did provide here that were, I just thought, a good example of how you want to do some kind of nitpicky local editing in your in-text comments, but also still focus on big picture global revision suggestions. So we have some like formatting things here, and you'll see throughout there are some like grammatical suggestions, but for the most part these are very qualitative, constructive comments. So for example, this statement is confusing. You know, it's taking away emphasis from the ad that you want to focus on. These things are repetitive. So this is kind of one of those more local grammatical flow kind of comments. And then moving on, it gets into more of the kind of meat of the discussion, what we should be talking about in terms of the visual and verbal strategies, the rhetorical effects, and how they could be maybe elaborated on just a little bit more. And then also the fact that there are multiple appeals being discussed. You know, saying here, the use of ethos and pathos and logo should each be their own paragraph. That's a really good constructive comment that this person now knows, okay, well, I need to go back and separate this discussion out and offer individual paragraphs for each. And then that kind of ties into some of the points that were being made earlier about the descriptions and the use of examples of each rhetorical effect. This is a good comment right here because it kind of speaks to why it's not always a good idea to use second person pronouns like you. It can really make the reader feel alienated if they don't identify with the you that, or the general you that you're referring to. So this person says, you know, I feel like you're telling me what to feel, because in the writing it says you feel your heart race and you want to help or shelter him. Your heart races. You know, I always feel this way when I'm reading students' draft, and I want to say to myself, well, who is the you that you're referring to here? Because it's certainly not me. So I think what you're talking about in this case, or what the writer is talking about in this case, is the audience. The audience feels their heart racing. The audience you know, feels compassion for the younger brother or whatever, but that's not necessarily me as a reader. So make sure you're kind of differentiating there between the audience of the particular video and whoever your reader is in this essay. And then just, you know, as I was saying before, more constructive, qualitative, good comments right here in text. You know, I don't understand what this entire section is for, and some elaboration there. How can you tie this into logos, pathos, and ethos, etc. And then make sure that you're evaluating here at the end. I'm not sure if this is your opinion or if this is what the ad is saying, and that kind of thing. So again, this is just an example of the kind of good in-depth comments that I want to see and that you can provide even in text. And then here for this end comment, you can see some good summary comments and then overall in-depth answers to all of those questions that are laid out in the instructions. Okay, and then another set of comments that I wanted to highlight because it just did a good job was the feedback that Phoebe provided on Hillary's original post. So again, you can see here there's a set of two different documents. We have the in-text comments, oh, excuse me, this is the end comment. We have the in-text comments here that again go very in-depth. There's kind of a good balance between local, grammar, formatting, flow, sentence structure kinds of comments, and actual constructive suggestions for ways to make the essay better meet the goals of the assignment. This point here, you don't actually have to have a thesis at the beginning, but you would need to have one at the end to achieve the delayed thesis that the rubric is talking about. So I just wanted to clarify that. But then again, you know, ways to better introduce the advertisement, ways to, even positive suggestions about or comments about this is something you're doing well, good job summarizing, all the while mixed in with the more grammatical and vocabulary types of suggestions. Can you elaborate on this point more? Here's what you need to explain. Make sure that you are evaluating the effectiveness of the ad here in the conclusion. So again, not just editing, but really constructive comments. And then not only is she again answering all of those questions from the instructions, but then offering that final overall comment at the end. Here's my main takeaway, my summary of what I think I want you to take away for your revision. And then again, these are all just really good comments, you know, better ways to implement the supplementary article, ways to better organize the essay, and things of that nature. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. If you're wondering how you might get a few more points in your workshop discussions, or why you maybe didn't get all the points, or maybe you're excited about the grade you received and you want to maybe know more about what you did well, those are just a couple examples of what I was looking for. And then in terms of your reflections at the end of the week, I did want to pull out a couple examples for 5 minutes of fame. Honestly, most of the reflections this week were kind of basic. That's maybe what I mean about the midterm blues. I think maybe this week was just a little bit overwhelming with everything you had to do, and then probably you all had things going on in your personal lives, I'm sure. So some of the reflections felt a little bit rushed, but there were two that actually met the criteria I was looking for, and so I did want to pull those out and highlight them because I think they offered some good synthesis of everything that we did over the course of the week. This person said, "My campaign analysis wasn't peer-reviewed by another classmate, but Mrs. Holly talked about it in her midweek review. I feel like I have all the info that I need to finish the project. I just have to rearrange it in a different order than what I have it in now. I also have to rework some of my sentences so they flow together better. I think if I work on it for a couple of hours each day, it should turn out pretty good. The only thing that I find strange is if I just do an analysis of one video, I feel it's misrepresenting the Pickens plan as a whole. The videos that I watched either relied heavily on pathos or focus more on ethos and logos. The Pickens Plan video campaign as a whole is well done and gives strong evidence for each aspect in the rhetorical triangle, just not all three in any one video. It's different than, say, the Meth Project, where all the videos pretty much had the same tone and message, in my opinion." So a couple things I want to point out here, reasons why I thought this was a good reflective comment. You know, it talks about some takeaways from the week, but then also plans for the revision. And so working on it a couple of hours each day, that's the kind of specific action item that I'm looking for when I say plan out your revision. You know, what is your step-by-step strategy for how you're going to get this done? And I do think, you know, looking at it a little bit each day is a much more effective way to write than trying to do it all at once, because then you get to take breaks and you kind of get to come at it with fresh eyes every time you sit down to do a little bit more writing. And that's what you need for revision, because if you don't see it with fresh eyes, you're not going to know what to change. And then also I thought that the second half of this comment offered just a good extension of the discussion and some feedback to me that I appreciated, some ways to maybe improve on the assignment. You know, I do see this, sometimes students struggle with the kind of disconnect between, okay, well, I do want you to look at a campaign, but I'm trying to narrow the assignment to the scope of what we have room for in the course. And so sometimes it's all you have time to do just to analyze one particular ad. And so I get that that is kind of a cognitive disconnect, and that can be maybe confusing or challenging. And so I'll take that into consideration, and I'm always looking for ways I can improve my assignments. So I'll have to get that some thought and see if I can come up with some way to maybe get the best of both worlds. And then this other person said, "This rough draft was a struggle for me to write. I had the hardest time incorporating my supplemental text and felt like it didn't flow with my analysis. After the midweek comments, however, I realized what to change in order to improve it. I was using the article as a separate entity but not relating it to my analysis sooner. Once I figure out how to do that, I think my paper will flow better and even be more convincing when I present my delayed thesis." Yes, I did not receive any peer feedback, which I'm pretty bummed about. I've said this a lot in class, but having a fresh set of eyes is truly beneficial and helps a writer create the best final draft possible. So just a couple of things here. I think this person offers some good reflection on what is one of the most challenging parts of the assignment, which is how to get in that supplementary text. And so I think everyone struggles with that, and this person is absolutely correct that you need to get it into your analysis before the end. It shouldn't be in its own separate paragraph at the end. It should be in one of your analysis point paragraphs. Does it enhance logos, or does it relate to the ethical appeal of the ad? If so, go ahead and talk about it right then. And then I just think it's interesting that both of these successful reflections this week came from people who didn't get any feedback. So in the future, just make sure you're posting your feedback on time so the discussions can go smoothly. Thanks everyone, and good luck with your